G'day, battlers, and welcome to episode, I don't remember what number this is, of the G'day Battlers podcast. I want to say episode 13, and someone is free to correct me later on. I mean,
Is
there's
that
no
me?
real
Nope.
need to, because, we'll find out by the time it's published, right? Because there'll be a number to the left of it. But anyway, more important things today, for the third time on the show, we're going to have a fantastic guest. Is what he paid me to say. YACOBERVITCH is coming on to join us as the Brisbane Regional Champion. YACOBERVITCH, a very, very famous name in the Australian scene, not only the winner of the one and only ever Oceanic International Championship and then contender at Worlds, but also someone who, I don't know, was probably like top 16 in Melbourne that first year or something. I don't remember. I didn't look this guy up. I just know him. He's the OCIC guy. So, hey, OCIC guy, what's up? How's that as an intro?
I mean, better than what you were going with before, so we'll take those.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that. That's fine. We'll leave that up to everyone's imagination. But
Also,
regardless,
does the sound bite of me count as a appearance, or is that kind of like a 2.5 times appearance on this show?
I mean, we included Feet YACOBERVITCH in the title, so I'm gonna say it counts. So
Third time guest.
Yep.
our first ever third time guest, and wait till it becomes 4 when we reuse that sound clip in next week's episode.
Oh, no.
Really rack it up. But I guess, so get into it. For those who aren't aware of who you are, who haven't paid attention to OCIC or are new to the podcast, yada, yada, yada. Who are you outside of, being OCIC champ? Where are you from? How do you get into PvP? Etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, so my name is YACOBERVITCH, as Steve has said. I'm located down in Melbourne. Got into PvP basically as I kind of just accidentally found it in, basically just playing Pokemon Go. I just found battles at one point and wanted to try it out. Slowly got more and more into it. I got introduced to Sylph by a friend of mine, and because he kept beating me in every single tournament that we did together, I wanted to get better, and I finally, after I'm just going to say a couple of years, I finally got good. So yeah, that's pretty much my introduction to PvP, and it's ruined my life ever since.
Now you've got to spend all of this time, tapping on Pokemons, traveling the world, going to Japan for the World Championships. It's awful, awful.
Yeah, closing out of games when I'm not supposed to.
Like you're a very skilled individual. We'll put it that way.
Flawless gamer.
Flawless.
So yeah, that pretty much rounds me up. But yeah, so yeah, recently, obviously, I won Brisbane, so that was pretty hype. I wasn't honest, again, kind of like OCIC. I wasn't going in with the mindset to win it. I was going in with the mindset of just having fun. So I had fun and I won. So I'm pretty happy with that.
I thought you went in with Brisbane with the mindset to retire. So do you want to touch a little bit about that?
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. So I did book my flights up to Brisbane, and then shortly after that, I reached a bit of a burnout stage of the game, and I was actually trying to figure out ways of how I can sort of slow myself down with it. And I figured, I was like, you know what, maybe if I just like cancel the flights to Brisbane and just sort of like hard shut myself off from it, it'll kind of give me like a bit of a break from it. I couldn't really get refunds for the flight, so I was like, okay, we'll go up. Maybe instead of even going to the tournament, I'll just make like a holiday weekend of it with my partner. And then it was the night before the tournament. I was still debating if I really wanted to go, and then I saw what the playmats looked like, and I thought to myself, hey, those playmats looked actually pretty cool. You know what? Maybe I will go because I want to pick up the playmat.
So I'm going to say that it was all because of me. Because I took a photo of the playmat as soon as I got it. I tweeted it and I put it up on the regional chat. So I'm like, yeah, no. So really, your win was my win.
Wait, was that you? That must have been where I saw it, yeah. Because I just remember seeing it on a Discord somewhere, and I was like, oh, that's a cool playmat. I really want to get that.
Wow. So
Now I
mad
have
props to
two.
Debbie Pebble.
Yep.
I mean,
Wonder
she
she
did.
got
She
that.
did write my winning tweet. She is the best.
Yeah. No wonder she got the shout out. Insane. Oh, I guess. I guess sorry to Stumpy. But Debbie Pebble just ruining his run at least. But hey.
I won't put the playmat up for the next one. How about that?
You've already lit the
Just put
fire under
something.
Yakko enough.
Damn.
Yeah, I know. Something shiny, look cool. I really want to get it.
The Charizard did look
but
pretty cool.
it did look pretty cool. But I think another big thing. It wasn't just the playmat, honestly. Like thinking about it more as well. Every one of these tournaments, the community and the atmosphere is always like it's just such. It's really really fun. Being able to actually see the people, obviously, that you battle and you chat online, like, you know, across communities and stuff like that. It's always just worth going to see them in person. So that was, like, another really big reason for me to actually want to go to the regionals, even if I didn't particularly feel like competing. So, yeah, it's like, community is pretty much always, like, it's always a big thing on my mind when I go to these. It's just, like, I would love to hang out with these people again.
Oh yeah.
So, but in terms of and then in terms of the whole retiring thing, well, I mean, that's gonna have to wait until after Honolulu. So,
Yeah, sure.
I can no. It's like I said, I'll retire for the next 3 months. Wait for Melbourne regionals. Come out of retirement. Try my hand at that, and then I'll retire again until Worlds.
We believe you.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm not making a convincing story, am I?
There's no chance. We'll see you next season. But either way, you know, definitely sort of hit the nail on the head, I guess, with the community being a very large part of sort of all of this, because, you know, Australia, like, we only have 3 regionals this season, for example. So outside of the World Championships, where there's, you know, going to be some Aussies hanging out that way, hopefully, as well. Like, these are sort of our 3 chances through the year to sort of get together and see each other. Assuming, you know, people are willing to fly all the way out to Perth, as you know, which, you know, there's a couple of folks over that way. One folk in particular who hates the Perth slander in this particular call, but it is a trek for a lot of people.
Come and visit me.
Yeah, I guess
So we were talking about Go Hub Avrip, or
Fine, you can visit him.
I'm less convinced now. Maybe I won't go to Perth. No. Much love that. But I guess we should probably focus back in on Brisbane. So we don't, I guess, need to go through the nitty gritty details. But I guess, Yako, this was the last tournament of the season, in a sense. So, like, no one is really looking towards our tournament to build their team. But it was the same weekend as one of the tournaments in Europe, but a lot of time to sort of steal teams from us, for example. And, like, we didn't have a champion yet. We only had a top 4. So do you just sort of want to, for good measure, sort of, I guess, bring us into your mind as far as putting your team together? Because, I mean, you've posted it on Twitter, but for those who are not a part of the Twitter sphere, give that sort of insight into how you built a relatively unique team.
Yeah, so Metacham is no longer. We're actually not really sure about this yet with the new update. But in the previous season, Metacham is just everywhere. It's on just about every single team, and I've tried So I don't do too many actual physical battles for practice. I do a lot of kind of just theorizing and brainstorming, just kind of as I'm going about doing other things. And one thing that I struggled to do is to find Metacham answers that aren't hard hard punished, and which was kind of it makes it tricky because you look at things that Gligar, there's Ice type. You look at Sableye, there's Lickitung, Umbreon. You look at Charmers, there's Steel types, and with Clodsire being around, there's a new Poison type. So things to answer Medi with was just it. they weren't safe to use. So they weren't safe to use, and I decided to go down another route in terms of if I can't counter Medi, then maybe I can try and just sort of work my way against everything else and just expect Medi to come in every single game against me, which based on my memory from the tournament, pretty much every single match that I played had a Medi on the opposing side. So my team consisted of Superior, Lantern, Metacham, because everyone uses one, Umbreon, Shadow Dragonair, and Shadow Kanto Ninetales. So there's a reason for each one. Metacham, because it was broken. Like, again, it's hard to counter it, so you may as well just use it, right? Like, if you can't beat them, join them. Lantern, Superior they make a really strong core. Like, those two, obviously Lantern is now like another OP mon that everyone knows of. Superior just has Frenzy Plants is just so good for neutral matchups. Umbreon specifically, because I was actually told a lot to consider using Lickitung. I liked Umbreon for the fact that it made the Licky Medi core kind of work not as well, especially for people that used Lickitung as a safe swap or would always use it as we play a matchup out, now I'll go to Lickitung to sort of sponge energy. It made where the Lickitung could be placed a lot easier to predict, or as in it was just sort of easier to position around because you always you have Metacham as your damage user, Lickitung as a sponge, and they work really well in tandem. Umbreon kind of stops that because Umbreon can absorb the Metacham energy, like the charge moves, and Umbreon can absorb the lick damage from the Lickitung. So it actually has counterplay against both those mons. Shadow Dragonair, because it's just oppressive with its Dragon Breath. I also thought it was a good way, because I knew that Lantern's Superior core was so strong, Dragonair was a great way of breaking that core as well. So I knew that people could not run a Grass Water core against me, at least not safely. And Kanto Ninetales, I figured Azumarill is almost nowhere to be seen in the meta, and a lot of people have been dipping into a double ice plus a grass team, so triple weak the fire with only one fire answer. So I wanted to use Kanto Ninetales as kind of a awkward core breaker for teams, and made it difficult for my opponents to bring lines against me that actually worked well. They kind of a lot of the time it was kind of they had to guess what I had to do, what I had to bring in, and in that case I could just bring all the neutral mons I had. So sort of forced them into an RPS where I didn't have to.
Yeah, and Debbie and I were both sort of there and got to sort of see you battle in action. And for those that aren't aware, I suppose, this morning as we're recording this, but just maybe a couple of days ago, the last week when you're listening to this, we just did a little bit of a recap of the top 4 battle, or the battles from the top 4, day 2 at Brisbane. And so we sort of got a bit of a refresher as to how all of the battles went. And in the grand finals against Stumpy, you use the same 3 Pokemon again and again and again and again and again and again. Because, I guess, as you say, you're sort of building that really strong core of Pokemon that the opponent has to get really lucky against, that you actually have quite a bit of play to sort of wriggle around their team a little bit. And you ended up doing pretty well, to say the least.
Yeah, so against as you saw against Stumpy's team in the grand final, even though Stumpy had a Registeel and a Frostlass, Superior was still incredibly strong against that team, because Superior up energy or up shields beats Frostlass, and Registeel is not a consistent check for Superior. So I believe it was in game 1 where I safe swapped Superior and he bought in the Registeel. My Superior beat the Registeel and came out with energy loaded. So it just shows how strong it was in the right scenario.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the other interesting thing, I guess, because he sort of pointed out how Superior is such a powerful Pokemon, especially sort of pairing it up with that Lantern and making that dynamic duo, which, very well could be a dynamic duo if we see going into this next season. We'll just have to wait and see. But none of the other top four had a grass type. There was not a single grass type on any of their teams. They all had a Lickitung, so they had access to Power Whip at least, but, how many power whips do you really get to land through a tournament? Not that many overall. So it's sort of, I guess, left like in some sense you would look at that and be like, okay, so maybe Ninetale is a little less useful because you don't have this grass type that you'd be countering really strongly. But I feel like Ninetale has just continued to be a really powerful pick for you anyway. I guess it's hard because we're in this situation where we're just moving into a new meta, so things are going to be very different. So it's hard to sort of give recommendations or adjustments or whatnot. But do you think that Ninetales is just an underrated pick for that meta, I suppose, in general? Because I feel like we didn't see a lot of it through the season. And even looking at like the other teams in the top four, it feels like it is just a very neutral Pokemon. You don't have a lot of hard wins, I guess. Do you agree with that, or do you see it slightly differently?
No, so you hit the nail on the head pretty well when it comes to Shadow Canine in the sense of like, and I really put Kanto Ninetales in there as a secondary hard check to Alolan Sandslash. Just because Alolan Sandslash, I just as a mon, I really dislike. Its coverage is amazing. Obviously, the ice and ground, but its defensive typing is so bad in the sense of Metacham is on every single team, and yet people are bringing like Shadow Alolan Sandslash or regular Alolan Sandslash, which is double weak to fighting. I just felt like I didn't like the fact that people that I didn't. So I'm not gonna say I didn't like the fact that people use it. I didn't like how I didn't want to use personally because I didn't like how it's utilized. But I knew other people were going to be bringing it. And people always bring Alolan Sandslash even though there's a Metacham. So I figured, what's one way to stop it? Bring a second mon that deals double super effective to it. So bring fire and fighting, and no one will feel safe running that thing against me. Because there's always Kanto Ninetales or a Metacham that can come into a matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, was there a lot of... Did you come up with... or were you against a lot of Alolan Sandslash teams, though, during your run in Brisbane?
I came up against one, and this was actually the guy who beat me. This is a guy who knocked me down to the losers bracket, Mr. Lay. Mm-hmm. He didn't actually beat me with Alolan Sandslash. I mispredicted his what lines he was going to run. I really thought that he was going to run a Pelipper Alolan Sandslash core, which is very strong against my team, had a lot of play, and that costed me because I overthought too much. I thought he was going to do something. He did something completely different, which in sense made me lose. But which I actually faced him later on in the losers bracket, and I went with my initial instinct during the second round and managed to beat him there. Again, actually with the help of Kanto Ninetales because of its neutral play, as Steve asked earlier. Just being able to put in a lot of work, even though it doesn't hard beat anything, it puts in enough work to set something else for a farm down, like a Superior or Metachamp, which with energy can do so much work against a lot of people's teams.
Yeah, I think just now talking about Mr. Lay 97. Now you mentioned that you versed him twice. Now he wasn't the only person that you versed twice during this regional.
No, I had a lot of repeat opponents in this tournament. So I had to battle Mr. Lay twice. I had to battle Misa 76, I think. I know it's Misa. I had to battle her twice. And I had to battle Stumpy twice. So I had to battle 3 people 2 times in this tournament. So yeah, I basically kept facing the same team comps over and over again.
So tell me how you felt going into, like, I suppose, like, meeting the same opponent again. Obviously, with Mr. Lay, you lost that first one, and then obviously winning the second one, and with Misa coming up against her again twice.
So Misa was a bit of a different story. Misa unfortunately had a bit of a technical error on her team sheet, where unfortunately she was forced to take a game loss against me. It was only for her first round, which I believe she got a bye in round 1, so she was automatically in round 2, but she took the game loss there. So when I came up against her in round 2, I only had to beat her the once. So it might have played out differently because she actually took the first game off me. Her team was really difficult for me. She ran Clodsire, which is a huge core breaker for my team. Clodsire, she had like I believe she had a Superior. I could be wrong, but she had Clodsire. She had a Carpink. Carpink again is kind of tricky for my team. She had a Mantine. Basically, what I tried to do in terms of forcing my opponent to go into like kind of a guessing RPS, it backfired for this matchup in particular, because Clodsire and Clodsire Mantine created a very dangerous core against my team that I struggled to find my way around. And then obviously she had the Metacham, which she could bring safely in every game, and she had an Umbreon, which she could also bring in safely every game against me. So she had a very, very safe team in terms of what she wanted to do. So when I beat her the first time, I felt a big sense of relief, thinking, okay, that's out of the way. And then, about 3 rounds later, Clodsire came up on my opponent's team list again, and I was thinking, oh boy, here we go. I was thinking maybe I only got lucky the first time. But yeah, so managed to beat her again then, but she put up a very difficult fight to break through her team.
Even going, like, I'm pretty sure it was a 2-1 result when you faced the second time as well, right? Like, without the sort of one game's advantage, it was still like a very close set going in for sort of a second round. If my memory serves, is that right? Should I bring the bracket up? Probably.
Yes. No, you are correct. She took a game off me. She took a game off me in both matchups. So yeah, because like I said, her team was very safe. Her team was very safe against me and very strong. Clodsire as a core breaker I wasn't expecting to see many Clodsire, if I was going to be honest. I wasn't sure about how many Carpinks I was going to find either. I was expecting a lot more Alolan Sand/Glygers than I actually saw. I think I only saw the only Gligar I think I faced was Rick Flareon, and the only Alolan Sandslash I faced was Mr. Lay.
Vish also had a Gligar.
Right, I could be wrong.
I'm pretty sure
Valiant
Vish. Yeah, although I'm not sure if he used it.
He did. You're right. Yes, he never used it against me though.
Yeah. It's just hanging out in the background. So I guess that's actually another sort of, I guess, big question in the sense that you had to play a lot of incredibly high caliber battlers in this tournament. And like, I guess it's because we're starting to get into these later seasons where like we've had a couple of seasons, we've had a couple of world championships. So like the cream has like, from the previous seasons has sort of risen to the crop a little bit. And so a name like Valiant Vish comes across and it's like, oh, we are all on the same page. Valiant Vish is an incredible battler that like chance of winning any regional he comes across. And, having to take on Rick Flareon, another name that is just like at the top of these, like every single leaderboard that is sort of out there. As someone who is also, whether you like it or not, considered to be like a really strong battler from Australia and, taking out OCIC and certainly, I mean, I know this is sort of retroactive, but certainly now after taking the crown for Brisbane, it only goes further. But how does it feel for you to have to take on these really tough opponents? Like, is it in your head at all? Do you just completely ignore it? Is it just like, is it actually easier because you're battling someone that you actually know a little bit more, that you might understand their play style? Like, what goes through your head in playing essentially the other Australian titans, I guess?
So I might add a little context to this. When I battled Vish at Worlds, I think it got to my head too much. I think I put too much pressure on myself, and Vish handed me a very sound defeat. Like honestly, I feel like even though people say it wasn't, in my mind it was a very one-sided fight. He outplayed me and outclassed me in every way during those battles. When it came to Brisbane, when I knew I had to face him again, I know he's a good battler. Like there's no doubt about that. I wanted to go of kind of like just blanking out like, right, this is a guy who's top cut twice at Worlds. He's he's accomplished battler. I am literally just going to put it out of my mind. I'm just going to go in and just basically just pick my lines, do my battles. I'm not going to think about like what he could do, what could it accomplish. I'm just going to think about, right, these are his Pokemon, these are my Pokemon. What can I use? What looks good? And how I play out the matchup from there.
Yeah, sure. It's very much just sort of trying to separate it out, bring it back to the sort of, I guess, the core, the basics. Forget about the fact that you're playing someone incredibly strong and just roll with the punches. I guess.
Yeah, I like the idea of just being present with it. Like, I always use the kind of saying that like anyone can be defeated. It doesn't matter if we're not talking about its accent, but anyway, but like I get the idea that like everyone has a bad day, everyone makes mistakes, so it's always a window of opportunities. So it although when you are against up the Titans, it can be daunting, and I like the idea that you've just kind of like, well, what's on the paper, what's his team, what's my team, okay, let's just roll.
Yeah, exactly. However, I did have a somewhat of a different mental, I guess, like thought process against Rick Flareon. Rick is someone who I've battled numerous times in whether it be in Sylph or GBL or other formats, and I have never once beaten him. He is someone who I'm pretty sure has had a like 100% win rate against me, and all very one-sided. Like I've never been able to just take a somewhat of a victory against this guy. So after I beat Vish and then seeing Stumpy beat Rick Flareon, at that point I kind of just almost resigned myself to thinking, right, I got third place. Not much chance I'm beating Rick. Not much chance of beating Rick just because he's had my number that many times. He knows me too well. He knows my game style. He knows my game plans way too well. I don't know if the clip played after I won my match against Rick. But you hear me actually saying I finally beat you, cheering to myself because I thought I finally beat him after like 2 years of battling with this guy. I finally got a win against him. And
such a crazy close.
Yes, it was, and especially in a scenario like in a tournament where it mattered like that. It was a huge jump of confidence for me to finally get a win over Rick Flareon.
And again, this is sort of the famous matchup that not only did you beat Rick Flareon, but you also beat him after swiping out of the app and then trying to get back into the app and then failing to get back into the app and then finally getting back into the app and then not being able to tap on the charge move that you'd farmed up because Rick had sort of taken you down.
I didn't need that weather ball. I was saving it for another day.
Save for the next match.
I was saving it for the next tournament I match up against Rick Flareon. But yeah, I didn't need that weather ball. But that match that set of 5 against Rick was insanely close. Every game I felt like I had to pull out as many tricks as I could. BMPing him on every opportunity that I could think of where it mattered, saving energy, making sure he wasted his own. I just had to figure out how I could best play against him. And I think Rick actually told me as well. I think it was after our matches that he finds me very predictable. He knew all the lines. He knew what lines I was going to run. Like when I led Metacham into his Gligar game 1, he said, "I knew you were going to lead Metacham." He actually countered me in one way or another. I think in 4 of the 5 games, I was at a like I had bad matchups just throughout the entire, like going all the way through. And that just shows how good Ric Flair is. Like he able to read me so easily throughout all five. Like not even just in the best of one or best of three, but a best of five. Like still predicting me what I'm doing right up until the end. So
Okay,
yeah,
so-
like I said, beating him. Yeah.
Do you think you threw him off his track when he thought that he knew exactly what you were going to do, and then you tapped out of the app? Do you think that just let him off the trail and opened up the door of opportunity to?
Maybe, yeah, maybe it threw him off. Maybe he's like, oh, like YACOBERVITCH is so thrown off, he's even quitting the game. Like this should be easy now. Like I don't have to. I shouldn't. Like it's not even gonna be a contest anymore. I feel like I played the long game there.
All part of the strategy.
It was so the strategy was so convoluted. I didn't even know I was doing it.
It's the famous trope in these random like TV shows or movies where it's like, oh, they can predict everything we have to do. The only way to win is to be unpredictable, and just I'm throwing this game. Let's get out of here. And I mean, look, it came down to the wire with a 3-2 result. So like down to game 5. There were multiple games through your run, especially in day 2, because, you know, obviously after the first 2 matches that were played simultaneously, every matchup was like played one at a time. So everyone that was there was watching only those battles. And there were multiple times that like we were sort of all watching like, oh, the health bars are really small, but I feel like your opponent's got it. Like I feel like Rick's got this one. And then like this one fast move goes through and it's like, oh no, Yako's taking it. And it was like just insane constantly. And it was just like, that's the sort of stuff that you don't get to see very often. And I feel like it really does. Obviously, we all know Rick's skill level. And I feel like it speaks to both of your skill levels that the game sort of came to that close of a finish. So, I mean, mad shout out to this Yako guy, whoever he is. It seems to be pretty good at this game.
It felt very appropriate that the game 5 between me and Rick ended on a 1 HP win. It's hard to see on the screens, obviously, like from the stream because they're filming, but like because I obviously was staring at the screen. So Metachamps, a lot of people have been going into the Medislayer Metachamps. Obviously, like higher attack, winning CMP, and all that. I actually ended up just choosing to go with rank 1, my rank 1 psychic medi. Like there was no differences, no fancy tricks, just sure and simple, just rank 1 psychic metacham. And I believe because I went with that specific metacham, I survived on that 1 HP against the Gligar, which got me the win at the end there. If I had run a attack weighted with less HP, I probably would have lost.
Yeah, I believe so. Because like if you wrote it on paper that you're countering down a Gligar, it just doesn't make sense. So the fact that it came literally down to that, like, it's not even a sliver of health. You couldn't even see the health. I think in the video you hear Gon in the background going, it's like, what? Like,
oh yeah,
you see both of them fall down at the same time, and obviously it was actually up to the point where it was just the you win screen was actually the determinant of like who won that match.
Yeah, because I think coming from Gon's side, it looked too obvious that Rick was going to win because he had a Gligar wing attacking down the Metachamp, but I think I just had enough HP, like I said, because I had the full bulk one, so I had more HP, which ended up me surviving the extra wing attack, I guess, to counter down the Gligar, and surviving on that 1 HP win. So I don't know. For me, it felt very appropriate that a match between Rick and I, where I finally get my first win over him, ends up in a game 5 for 1 HP win.
Incredibly thematic, just a real clincher, and it's definitely one that's going to stick in his head, if not yours, for sure. And I'm sure we'll be looking for revenge next time, but that's a next time story. I'm sure you'll never have to face Rick again, ever.
I hope not. No offense, Rick, if you're listening to this, I don't ever want to battle you.
The job's been done. Let's never try it again. We got one good dice roll.
I pulled off my one fluke, and that was, no, not including OCIC fluke. I pulled off this fluke. I'm done. I'm happy with that.
I don't know. That's two supposed flukes in a row. This guy seems a little cracked, a little bit more cracked than he's putting on. But I guess that brings us to the grand finals where you had to face Stumpy. You had to get a bracket reset to sort of push through, and you won. First, you won 3 in a row, and then you won another 2 in a row to make it 5 in a row, and then before dropping your first game to Stumpy. Are you just like, and I think you had quite a strong team composition against Stumpy, where your superior especially was incredibly strong against his team. Just didn't have like a really solid answer against it. There wasn't like a Gligar running around, or there certainly wasn't a Kanto Ninetales. And you were sort of, again, running those 3. You ran the same 3 Pokemon basically every time. Like all of those first 6 games, it was the same 3 Pokemon. Uh, how did it feel being in such a dominant position in the grand finals? Because I don't think it's a position that many people have ever been in, getting to the grand finals, but then just like it feels like you must have had so much confidence, sort of like, especially after like the first game, the second game, the third game. It's like, surely this is locked. Or was there still the sort of stress in the back of your mind going, oh, he could get me here. Stay vigilant.
Yeah, so that thought there, like the whole he could always get me here. I need to stay attentive. Obviously, that's always there, no matter what the opponent is. Like anyone can always pull anything off. Beating Rick, because he was my match just before the grand finals. Beating Rick boosted my confidence a lot. Thinking, because I know the teams already. I know what Vish ran. I know what Rick was running. I know what Stumpy was running before day 2. Stumpy was not a team I was that worried about because I already had a game plan in mind with the superior, and I was confident I could make that work. But after the added bonus of beating Vish and Rick, my confidence was up pretty high, and I was very much feeling my game being quite good at that point. And having my game plan against Stumpy with the superior Lantern Metacham, all 3 just being quite safe against his team. Yeah, I actually felt quite confident, and about that I could pull off the win against Stumpy.
Okay, one more question on this Stumpy thing, because you ran this same team 6 games in a row. You win the first 5, Stumpy wins number 6. You then make one of the absolute wildest calls. You change one of your Pokemon into Kanto Ninetales, which is, again, not a Pokemon you've brought in any of these games against Stumpy. And Stumpy swaps out into his Frostlass, and you're right there to swap into your K9 and absolutely dominate the 7th game, seemingly out of nowhere. Stumpy, after seeing that same team for 6 games in a row, was definitely expecting the same team for number 7. And you just came out with this massive hard counter, completely demolished him, and like such a crushing sort of 7th game to sort of finish off the grand finals. What was going through your head when you decided to make the team swap into the Ninetales? Were you happy to risk it a little bit and be like, well, I'm still ahead, so we can sort of give one game a go? Or were you just like so confident that like he's got Frostlass back there, I'm gonna catch it?
Okay, so I was okay. So two things I had in mind here. One, that was the first game Stumpy took off me. So that was the first game he took off me. In my head, he was going to go for the same game plan again because he tried a bunch of other strategies. None of them worked. This one worked. In my head, he's going to try the exact same thing again. Except this time, what I was thinking to myself is, Swampert got hard punished game 1 and 2 because I had superior. He's not bringing the Carbink because I'm not bringing Dragonair. I'm not bringing Umbreon against him. Kanto Ninetales has a small play, but it was safer for me not to run it, so I'm not expecting his Carbink or Swampert because superior is in every single game. So at that point, knowing these things, I felt so confident that I could bring my Kanto Ninetales. Because in my mind, there was no chance he was going to bring Swampert or Carbink. I was that confident that I could happily bring Kanto Ninetales in the back because Stumpy was going to run the exact same line again because it was the only line that worked for him.
I think after 6 matches, it sounds about right. Yeah.
The thing that actually, what really tipped me off, especially when Game 7 started, was Stumpy shielding the first Frenzy plant. Told me immediately it was Metacham Frostlass in the back, because he was going to try and take Switch and get the alignment that he wants. He wants to get, because he knows I'm bringing Metachamp, he wants to get his Frostlass in the Metachamp and get, obviously, what was probably my Lantern onto his Metachamp. Or just get a huge farm down for his Frostlass, which then he can threaten the Lantern with. But me thinking, okay, I'm going to go with a different approach. I'm going to bring the Kanto Ninetales, which doesn't need to burn through shield to take him out. I can just fast move him. I can just put on so much fast move pressure.
Yeah, and obviously, just having that foresight to be able to read. I mean, yes, you have played 6 matches by this point, but having that foresight to read ahead and being like, okay, this is, predicting that and getting it right on such a important finisher as well. So it didn't need to go to a game 10, or in this case, game 8. But yeah, and to finish off in style as well, and that, now you've qualified, and our first representative for Australia for the World Championships in Hawaii next year. So this will be your second time going to Worlds. Is there anything from, let's say, the first time or back in Yokohama earlier this year that you think that, what you've learned from that first attempt at Worlds that you would, how you would like to change it up for next year?
Easily for me, it's mindset. I went into Yokohama, I think, with the wrong mindset for how I think it's best for me to play. As we've seen, when I playing in Brisbane, I was playing a lot more relaxed. I was enjoying myself, enjoying the battles, having fun. OCIC, similar thing. I was enjoying myself. I was having fun. Yokohama, I think I wasn't enjoying myself. I think it was a little bit too overwhelming for me. I let it overwhelm me. I think I was putting too much pressure to perform well, and it had the opposite effect of it really hindered my gameplay. I was making the wrong decisions because I was overthinking everything. So yeah, mindset for me, going into Worlds for 2024 season, I really want to have a much more relaxed mindset going into it.
Yeah, which I think is definitely a very fair point, and I think it's one that I think gets slept on a little bit. I think people are so focused on team composition and what are you bringing, what's your team, have you practiced, have you scrimmed, are you prepared, and you sort of just forget that I guess headspace piece where you sort of mentioned it before in taking on Vish/Rick in Brisbane. But there is a very real piece to it that is just where your sort of mood and vibe is sort of at. And I can certainly speak to that as well, because in Sydney, I was having an absolute blast. I was having a great time, and Misa sort of came up to me at some point and was like I've sort of been watching everyone battle, and you in particular seem to be having a really good time, and it seemed to be bringing me more success than I'd ever seen in the past. Very much linked into just how much of a good time I was having. And I think just being in that relaxed state, I mean, they sort of talk when you're, and this is, I'm a youthful guy, so I'm basically just may as well have been out of high school, but I'm still remembering all of the high school things where they were like, if you use the same colored pen to write the notes for this subject, then you'll be in that mindset when you're actually doing the proper thing. And I think in the same sort of vibe, if you're practicing for PvP and you're sort of having fun with friends, you're sort of just, having a bit of a banter, having a bit of a laugh, and you are still in that mindset as you do the actual thing, I think that could actually be pretty powerful in putting you in the right spot to remember everything remember how skilled you are, remember how well you can do. And personally, I'm very much looking forward to sort of seeing you take on Worlds a second time, because outside of Worlds, you've literally got 2 number 1 victories under your belt, right? So I think you can definitely go a lot further than you went this year in Yokohama. So I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah, I like to try. I definitely want to try and do better. For Hawaii. Sorry, but yeah, it's yeah, exactly as you said. Just the like having fun. When I do scrims with friends, I'm a much more relaxed state because I know these battles aren't for any stakes. These battles are for basically just trying things out, learning, and I have fun with them. And I always perform. And I usually perform very well in scrims. I always have fun, and if I bringing that same mindset into actual tournament battles usually has the same result of me performing well and doing well because I'm enjoying myself. I'm not overthinking anything. So yeah, definitely something I want to try and utilize at Worlds for this year.
Absolutely. And I guess heading towards Worlds as well, if we can do a hard pivot, I'm not even going to try for a clean segue, but we've obviously just moved into a new season where there's a bunch of new move updates, and the Hawaii's World Championships is not going to be for a couple of move updates away. I guess what we've actually currently moved into is the meta that is going to be used in February. So it is, I guess, still an important one as far as you're concerned in your competitive endeavors. So I guess sort of wanted to get or pick your brain a little bit, or we haven't talked about this on the podcast at all. So this is sort of the first episode. I mean, not only since the new season, but the first one in like a couple of weeks now, as we were sort of in the lead up towards Brisbane. Sorry guys, one day we might have a schedule, maybe. Until then, don't forget to follow on Twitter. But obviously, whole lot of move updates. So what is sort of striking you, Yako, as first Australian competitor for the World Championships as something that like could be pretty important, or the highlights, I guess, going into this brand new season of Timeless Travels?
Definitely sort of where the meta is going to be heading with all the move updates, with the finally Metacham somewhat put to rest as just the top dog of Great League, like receiving another psychic nerf, which I think was definitely needed, to a point where it's still like Metacham is still viable, but not OP anymore, and that's opened the door for a lot more variety of Pokemon to come in. I think with the moveset changes though, and I know it's not just my opinion, but I'm going to be stating it. It's definitely leaning towards a bit of an RPS sort of, at least for the early stages right now, it's leaned into a very RPS state of water and fire, because a lot of water moves got buffed, a lot of fire moves got buffed, but all of them meant that Lantern, who didn't receive a single move change at all, is now so strong because everything that got stronger loses to Lantern.
Whoa. Are you forgetting about Trailblaze Cacturn? Hello.
Look, if anyone wants to actually send footage of a Cacturn trailblazing and taking out a Lantern, go ahead. You will get mad props if people can just go Lantern hunting with Trailblaze, like Cacturn, Trailblaze, Alolan Meowth. For whatever reason, they decided to give it to them. If people want to go hunt lanterns of these Pokemon, go ahead. I wish you all the success, all the luck for that.
I may have just crushed my own dreams because I just typed into PV Poke Cacturn, and I was like Trailblaze still does a lot of damage to Lantern, but
it doesn't one shot it.
Well, Cacturn also has access. The Grass Knot is the same amount of energy as Trailblaze, but does a fair chunk less damage. So that's actually a completely useless move on Cacturn. Cacturn, by the way, guess how many charge moves Cacturn has, by the way?
I want to. Okay, hang on. I want to take a guess of this. Okay, it's literally either like 2 or like 8 for whatever reason. I'm gonna go with 6.
You've actually bang on. It has 6 charge moves. Now that it's got Trailblaze. So just for the TM roulette of it all, they've increased it from 5 to 6, where they've just added a move that is literally worse than what it already has. So they've and they've done so much of it. Like added parabolic charge to Dedenne, which is just literally worse than discharge, which is like, oh, man. I, I really
So-
thought that Trailblaze Cacturn was going to be good, but I'm disillusioned now.
So, are we going to see Trailblaze Cacturn on your team, Steve, from Melbourne?
Steve be yet again the first person to bring a niche mon to a play Pokemon tournament.
It's going to hold up the
yeah.
tournament again, like because it's not on
Every
RK9.
Nope.
Always. Look,
Okay, hang on. Okay. I kept hearing this story, but I never got to hear what happened with RK9 and why did you delay? Like, what happened?
Okay. So basically, Brisbane Regional last year, it was the very first tournament of the season. It was literally like the 3rd of December or something like that, and it was the move update where they just buffed Wing Attack. And alongside Wing Attack buff, they'd also added some moves like Brutal Swing to Ampharos. And this was going straight into the 2-0 Butters, sort of like the bet with Caleb Peng, with, hoping that someone would win a regional with Shadow Ampharos. And if they'd done that, then Caleb would delete his Bastiodon. So I was like, hey, I'm up for the challenge. Let's bring Ampharos into this puppy. I put Brutal Swing on it. But then it turned out that RK9 hadn't updated for the new season yet. And so you weren't able to add Brutal Swing as a move to Ampharos. So I was like, okay. Obviously, this isn't supposed to be the case, so I sort of messaged ESL and I was like, hey, just letting you know, I'm trying to register this Ampharos. It doesn't have Brutal Swing. I've registered it with one move just for good measure, but I'm letting you know now, putting it in writing, the other move is supposed to be Brutal Swing. And they were like, okay, we'll let you change it on the day. And I was like, okay, sweet. So we get there, tournament's supposed to start at 9 a.m. And they're like, all right, guys, we've just got RK9 has updated. I think they updated it like 6 a.m. or something, which was after the team submission closed. So they're like, all right, 9 a.m., you've got half an hour to sort of you can edit your team if you'd like to now. And we tried to, and it didn't work. RK9 just wouldn't let any of us change anything. And it was like, oh, okay. So they needed to like send it back to the devs, I guess, and they needed to do some more work on it. It took them another half hour. They tried again. It didn't work. They tried again, and it sort of finally got through. And essentially, the whole affair delayed the tournament by a little over an hour. It then became apparent I was the only person that was trying to register a brand new move, and there was not a single other person in that building who was trying to register a team with these like RK9 changes. No one else was trying to edit their team. It was literally just me, and therefore literally only because I was trying to use Brutal Swing Ampharos, the Brisbane Regional was delayed by over an hour. So you're welcome, everybody. But hey, I didn't do that this time. So they'd added.
Okay.
I mean, I was using Dusclops this time, so it didn't have any new moves.
So what you're saying is Butters, who wasn't even in Australia at the time, is the reason for Brisbane being delayed because you wanted to use Ampharos because of Butters.
Yep, if we're all happy to shift the blame that one person deeper, yep, it's all Butters' fault. So thanks, Butters.
Jeez, Butters.
Like we needed any help in delaying the starts of our regional tournaments.
These Americans.
Ridiculous. These guys just exerting their influence and all these things.
You're welcome, Steve, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, Jacko. I really needed that. Oh my gosh.
Well, we came close again for this regional because DJ Kizza wanted to register his Shadow Sneasler that just got the tick of okay and what was it, earlier in mid-November that Shadow Sneasler was approved to be in the Play Pokemon tournaments. And I get a quick DM from him on Friday night being like, Debbie, am I doing this correctly? I can't click the shadow button for Sneasler. And I'm just like, oh no. And all I could think was like, oh, this is Brutal Swing to Ampharos again. It's Brisbane all over again.
Except this time they were actually really good.
Shadow, though.
Well, it's for fun.
Yeah, they learned from you.
Well, they fixed it quite quickly.
Yes, very quickly. So you're welcome, guys, I guess, for improving your processes. Also, I'll take credit for that one. Butters can take the bad side of the stick. I only helped. But for those that weren't aware, also to bring it back to Melbourne, I guess link it to Yako's original comment. I ran Dusclops in this regional, which is the first time that anyone has ever run a Dusclops in a Play Pokemon regional. Shout out to DracoViz because I sent Polymers up a message being like, "Hey, can you just like do you have a spreadsheet on your end that we can just check if Dusclops has ever been used before?" And he was like, yeah, he's really helpful. He sort of checked and was like, okay, no one's brought it to a regional before, but someone did bring it to one of the Asia Pacific qualifiers. So I was like, all right, fair enough. I can still say never before in a regional. And no one had brought a regular Wailmer to a regional before either. So at this point, we sort of just have to keep the trend going, right? Like, try and get success with something wacko, but I don't think it's going to be Cacturn.
So what's going to be the one for Melbourne then?
Well, see, so I was looking at this data site that Green BV had actually set up some time ago. They haven't updated it for a couple months, I think, but you could essentially type in a Pokemon and check what teams it's been used on across all regionals. And so I was going through that database and just trying to find the Pokemon that had literally never been entered into the database. And one Pokemon that was on there that I thought was kind of interesting was Lugia. Has never been brought to a regional. I was like, I feel like this meta may not be the time, but I'll have to give a Lugia a bit of a look to see if there's any hope. I have a terrible feeling that in a Lantern meta, it's probably not the time. So I might have to keep digging.
Oh, you never know. Maybe for after Melbourne regionals, maybe for Perth when the meta changes again and Lantern gets nerfed into the ground. Lugia has a time to shine.
Oh yeah, I'll be ready. Perth, watch out. Lugia's coming towards you.
Does that
Melbourne
mean you're coming?
Oh, he is. He just admitted it.
Lock it in, Debbie. Lock it in. See you there.
I'll get the spare bed ready.
The question is, now it has to be are you bringing the Shadow or the Purified Lugia?
Oh my god!
Purified will go over 500. I think Purified will go over 1500.
We do have a regular
yes.
1500 with Aeroblast on there. So it's so I used it in Silver.
Okay.
So I think there'll be some chances. There will definitely be some spicy stuff going on. Will it have any success? One way to find out, I suppose. Stay tuned. And I don't think anyone's making any plans.
I'm definitely looking forward to how Melbourne how the Melbourne meta will look though, because obviously it's going to be quite late into the season. So you look right now. I feel like a lot of the vibes people are getting is fire, water, lantern, and then dragons has made a really big pop up right now because fire and water, they're kind of in contention for being strong. What beats them? Lantern. Cool. What beats all of them? Dragons. So dragons are coming in now. And then you have a weird little circle going around where you could also look at fairies coming in, because fairies beat dragons. What beats fairies? Usually water or fire types. So I feel like that's going to end up being a big triangle of fairies, lantern, and then water fire types. Sort of going into I feel like that's what's gonna
every time.
Finally, my triple charm team will make its debut.
And then there's a question of now when do the steel types come back in? Because I feel like steels in general are just not really around anymore because water and fire both got a huge buff. So yeah, it's kind of making it interesting, but I feel like out of all this, going on, there's still a few really interesting core breakers to the meta right now. One being Vigoroth with Rock Slide. Cradilly is also a very interesting as being able to beat pretty much everything listed above. It can beat fire, water. It can beat most fairies. So yeah, I definitely feel like there is very niche core breakers that can have a big have a big play, and I'm really really keen to see what. Especially with the new regionals coming up, I believe San Antonio and Stuttgart. Oh no, Stuttgart is coming up next week.
Yeah. This coming weekend.
So. I'm really keen to see what that's going to look like when it arrives and see what the meta is going to be there.
Yeah, Honestly, exact same page, because it feels like such a crapshoot at the moment. Like everyone is sort of looking in so many different directions. There's people talking about there's people talking about all sorts of things. Obviously, Wigglytuff with Icy Wind is getting a lot of attention, as well as
Yes.
people are sort of throwing a lot of fear on Wiggly's name, which essentially means that, if Debbie's competing in Melbourne, we know one Pokemon that's going to be on our team, uh, without a doubt. But they've also got things like Arctibax that was sort of already climbing up in usage a little bit. We saw Valiant Vish use it in Brisbane. It's just been given Icy Wind as well, which I think means that it is going to be seen even more and just feeds into the sort of dragon core breaking of it all. It will be interesting to see because, as you said, it's very early days in the meta. Brisbane was actually in this position last year at the very start of December, when the new move came through, and we were all just sort of guessing what the new meta was going to be. So we actually saw a lot more Pelipers than we ended up seeing for the rest of the season, because we were all like, oh yeah, Pelipper could probably be good. Not really, I guess maybe not even imagining how many lanterns there were going to be. There were more Toxapexes running around as well. And so like you have one idea of the meta. And then once you start to see it in action, it becomes really clear, okay, this works, this doesn't work. This is a really good core breaker for the stuff that works. The meta shifts again like a slightly little bit. So Stuttgart in particular is going to be a real Wild West, I feel, in the same way that Brisbane was. Potentially not as much, because they do have a little bit more time to prepare. They've actually got like a full week with the new moves to actually figure out what works a little bit more, whereas we had about 36 hours. But with that in mind, like I do think that there's probably going to be a lot of those picks that we're expecting to make a big splash. All the Town Flames and Lantern's still going to be really good. The Vigoroth with the Rock Slide, and it's just I'll be sort of waiting and watching to see what people use as a bit of a core breaker for what works, and expect a few iterations. Expect a lot more iterations between now and Melbourne in February for sure. We've got 2 months left. There's a long track.
Stuttgart, I think, will be it's gonna definitely be a defining moment in what the meta will become. If you look at, I think it's Out of Pocket now, I believe is his in-game name.
Yeah.
No longer trademarked. Sorry. So Out of Pocket, because I think because everyone's running Venusaur and stuff like that, and Superior kind of was just randomly on Out of Pocket's team.
Mm-hmm.
But he performed so well with it that immediately it picked up so much traction. And I am kind of expecting something similar to happen in Stuttgart, where someone will have a mon that people haven't really thought about using, no one's really picked up on, and will perform well with it. And I feel like that will become part of the meta.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Superior was actually the exact Pokemon that was going through my head as something that wasn't being talked about on like day 1 and 2 of the meta. We were very much focused on Gligar and Mandibuzz, and all of these other picks, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, yeah, actually Superior really checks out. You've got that Aerial Ace, you've got that bulk. It's like, yeah, I'm with it. And all of a sudden now we're going into a meta where we're expecting that Superior is sort of going to form part of the dangerous RPS triangle of Talonflame, Lantern, Superior. So we'll see how it does break up over time. We'll see if the dragons can really crack that egg open. But I mean, Debbie, is there anything else that you're actually excited about other than the Wigglytuff, or is that like, really? I mean, there's only one other fairy that got a move, right? And it's
Dedenne. Besides Wigglytuff and the Dedenne. No, well, I've been trying Wigglytuff, and I love charming things down. But with Icy Wind in it, I was like, no, I can actually make it to a move. Whereas Disarming Voice and Ice Beam were always a bit difficult to get to. Like, you would definitely have to shield up there. But I think I would love to. I always hope that there will be a fairy move that is like equivalent to Surf, but it didn't happen this season, so I guess we have to wait. But something that has been, I suppose we've talked about in the previous podcast, and something I want to bring up with Yako as well, is that Australia only has 3 regionals. and you are now the champion of Brisbane Regionals. You are competing in Melbourne Regionals with others that are going to compete, looking for a chance to qualify for Hawaii. Now, we've come to this situation where previously it was just the top two. So if you're the champion or the finalist, here's your invite to Worlds. You came first, here's a travel package. We don't have that situation anymore. We have a championship point system. And now that you have, although, you've got your invite to Hawaii and you've got 200 championship points, does not necessarily mean you have a travel award at this stage. It all, adds up at the end. So I want to know and pick your thoughts about, what do you think about this championship point system, and what are your thoughts going into Melbourne?
I'm gonna try and be not too critical of this. I like the idea of shifting it to the CP points. I, however, don't believe the way it was implemented into Australia was the correct way, given the fact that, Steve, I may need your help here. Do you know how many regionals Latin America is going to be getting?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it is actually a pretty easy check, because when you just type in Pokemon Regional Championships, it does split it up into the regions. So I've got it in front of me. Latin America actually only lists a single regional on their schedule, which is interesting. They always do say more events may be added at a later date as well.
Okay,
so one regional and one IC, I should say.
And IC. Okay, so this is a point I really want to get at, where Latin America has, at this stage, the same number of tournaments as Australia does, but they have an IC where the point gain is monstrously higher than it is at an IC. I believe getting a top 128 at an IC is like 150, 200 CP points. Like it's a crazy amount. Like it's a great way to get it, but 128th placement at an IC is the same as winning a regionals in terms of just championship points. Now, my big issue is Latin America.
These numbers are way off. I'm not sure where you're reading this table from.
I thought that was it, wasn't it? Isn't 120 a lot? Like, isn't ICs just heaps of points compared to?
I could be wrong there. Absolute stack of points. Like, it is incredibly huge. It does also, like, it's got a kicker attached, so you need to hit certain player numbers to sort of get these points.
Okay. I may be thinking with the kicker then.
So I think that if you have over 128 people, then you need to get to top 64, and then top 64 gets a 130 points, which is a significant amount of points for top 64 in a 128 person tournament. Like, it is really, really significant. So like the point still stands. It's crazy.
So if you're maxed out at 256 players for an IC,
then
is
the
there
top
another kicker once it's maxed out?
Yeah, so at 256, which unfortunately, the quirk of the system it's really not going to happen, because outs can sort of ruin you that have sort of registered. But in a world where you have 256 players, then the top 128 all get 100 points, which is like, you can get there so luckily with just, and I mean this with full respect, but you can get sort of like, with that many players, you can get sort of a string of new players, like really, like relatively easy opponents, and you can really just sort of sneak your way into the top 128, and you would instantly have 100 championship points, which is quite a struggle to get in the regional system, I would suggest, at top 8 requirement.
Okay, yeah, so forgive my wrong numbers before, but it still goes on the same thing where, like, let's go with the top 64. Top 64 at an IC will earn you 100 points. Getting fourth at a regionals, 130 points. Getting fourth at the regionals, like the one that we have for Brisbane, I'm pretty sure that one earns you 130 points. I believe I'm correct there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So top 64 and fourth place is the same amount of points for essentially. It's doing the same thing. It's still a tournament. You're playing the same thing. It's just one of them likely has more people because of its much bigger prize pool and more bigger rewards and all that. But the fact that Latin America and OC at this stage have the same number of tournaments, Latin America now getting cups and challenges, like their versions of like their locals to earn CP points, championship points. OC is still behind in that. We only have our three tournaments. We lost our OCIC, which is unfortunate. So we lose a big way for people to earn points. We've lost our Sydney regionals. So instead of having 3 regionals and an IC, and not even having 4 regionals, we just now have 3 regionals. And so, but our point requirement to reach Worlds is the same as Latin America, who has an internationals and now soon going to be having their locals to bolster their points up.
That's correct.
And the one thing that I'm definitely unsure about why, not so much unsure why, but I don't believe this was a good change, was invites no longer cascading. If I go to Melbourne, and let's just say hypothetically, or like, alternate reality sort of thing, I go to Melbourne and I win it. My invite does not go down to second place. I've effectively taken away an invite from another Australian player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, but as Debbie says, I have not guaranteed my travel package. This system is a little bit flawed in a sense. I'm incentivized to go to Melbourne to do well, to get myself a travel package, but I will be doing it potentially at the cost of another Australian representing us at Worlds.
Yeah,
Potentially,
it is.
yes.
I tend to be a pretty positive person, but I despise that part of the system. Like, I'm completely on board with championship points. I'm like, yep, I actually quite like the system overall in some senses. But the not having cascading invites for the first place, I don't understand from a perspective of like, and again, like if you have one player that's say we live in a world that we have one player that is just like leagues and leagues and leagues ahead of everyone else. Like they are just an undefeatable player. And say they live in Australia, they're going to attend all 3 regionals and they're going to crush them. And they're essentially going to get in the way of 2 other players getting a qualification from that first place spot. And I don't understand what the downside is of having it cascade when like you're that likely to have it cascading all the time. Like, not like you're going to see one of the regionals in North America that the top 5 have all already qualified. And so the invite cascades down to number 6. Like, that just doesn't feel like a reasonable thing when there's so many good players sort of running around that all have a chance to win. I can't get my head around the decision to have it like that. And I have to assume that they've got this system in place for VGC and TCG because they've been running on a championship point system this whole time. So I have to assume that there's logic behind it. I just don't understand what that logic is. It does not make a lick of sense to me.
I think the other thing to mention is that TCG and VG have had local tournaments up and running. So they can still get those championship points so early, whereas like really that because Australia doesn't have those local tournaments allowed at this stage, it really is I don't envy your spot, Yako. Like it is like, you want to go for that travel package, but you don't want to say kick a friend out at the same time. So hopefully we get some sort of I don't think we're going to get a resolution, but I think there'll be decisions will have to be made before Melbourne for sure.
I hope so, because let's take this for an example. Look at NAIC, this 2023 season. I'm pretty sure all 4 of the top competitors for NAIC already had invites to Worlds, and all 4 invites cascaded down to 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th place. Now, if this system now isn't what it was, if the system that we have now was in place back then, that wouldn't have been a thing. Like all 4 of those people would not have attended Worlds.
Yeah.
Because none of them would have gotten an invite. And yes, it's a small chance that someone can, get repeat wins. Like, obviously, I mean, you look at Wadaj, Rise, Axon, they've all done it. So obviously there is a chance, but why take away the cascading invites? Like, if it's such a small chance, if it's a smaller chance to begin with anyway, like, no one's guaranteed to get a world's invite from a regionals. Why not still give it if it's guaranteed anyway to the next person?
It's not like it costs much in the sense that, like, it's not like these guys are getting a cascading guaranteed travel award or anything. It's like they're just one person that sort of deserves to participate in the World Championships rocking up. I really can't fathom it. It doesn't make sense to me, but hopefully it is something that they're looking at. Hopefully it's something that they've just like copy pasted from TCG and VG, and they haven't thought about how it applies to Go with the sort of I guess smaller community that you have more chances that this sort of thing is going to happen. I really do hope so. And I guess I should, like, it's worth noting as well on the championship point front. The example that I always point to is that in the Australian system, you can currently come second place in a regional, come third place in a regional, and miss the third regional. Maybe you can't travel to Perth on that weekend, and you won't qualify for Worlds. You'll have 290 championship points out of the 300 you need. And that is just absolutely bonkers to me. Again, we currently don't have locals, which means like you have to make the trip to Perth, which if you can't make, or if you just can't make one of the weekends, like I have a commitment that I cannot dodge, I have to go to only 2. It's like, well, you'll have to fly all the way to Europe, which is one of the other points about the Latin American community, is that they do, at least, obviously it's expensive and many people don't have an opportunity to do this, but North America isn't that far away for a lot of them. And so it's sort of possible to sort of go and attend the North American regionals, which is something that competitors like Andrew Manjarrez has sort of done. He picked up a lot of points in North America for the Latin American leaderboard. And it's like that exists as an option, especially for battlers who are sort of like, oh, I'm just on the cusp of qualifying. I just need a little bit more, so I might travel up. We don't have any close options to do that. We have to travel a very long way from the Oceanic region out to either all the way to Europe or all the way to the United States. And they're not exactly close destinations. Like, even the World Championships happening in Hawaii is like closer than any possible regional that we could just sort of jump on to attend. Now, it has been said that, and like, I was so relieved to hear this, but an eye is being kept on the championship point sort of barrier for the Oceanic region. If we're just in dire straits and, Yako, you end up sweeping all 3 regionals and no one has got enough points to qualify for Worlds, it will reduce the championship point limit, which, like, reduce the barrier so that more people would qualify than like literally just you. So relieved is just the correct word when I saw that it is something they're paying attention to, just in case. We'll see what happens, when locals do actually roll out. We'll see how the championship points start to stack up. And look, we'll just really hope that Play Pokemon, TPCI are sort of really paying attention to this stuff, so that we don't get completely screwed, which, if nothing changes, could very well be the case that we're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely through there. It is like you said, a huge relief to know that someone does care. I think being in the Oceania region, sometimes we do get neglected, and the fact that they have reached out and are keeping a close eye is something that at least we know that something can be done. I personally would love to see some sort of like amalgamation of last year's system and this system kind of merged together, that maybe like the top 2 get the invites, but we'll still have championship points for the travel package or something like that. So we've got a guaranteed 6 that would represent Australia, and then you guys can fight it out for the travel award at the end or something like that. But we'll see how it all pans out. And I suppose once we get word, we'll definitely announce it on here as well, just so that everyone's kept up to speed on what's happening in Australia. And New Zealand, I suppose.
who also haven't had a regional this entire time. They had one back in 2017, but that was well before the go. So maybe one day. Sorry, guys. Really the forgotten child.
Yeah, I think just the CP system has gone a little bit too much into the quantity over quality side of things. Especially, you're looking at Go Cups and challenges. It's basically just if you can afford the time and the cost of spamming out tournament after tournament, not even necessarily performing like badly, but you're not getting top 8 or top cutting every tournament, but you're doing just well enough to get these points, going to your locals, doing those, you can very easily get an invite to World. So let's say for example, someone like Rick Flareon, let's say for whatever reason he hits that cusp of 290 points and can't go to Worlds. This is someone who's top cutted at Worlds twice already. But then you may have someone in another region who, he's attending, because Rick can only do 2 tournaments. Let's say he can only do 2, he's come second and third, doesn't have enough points. You have someone who goes to another tournament, let's say he averages top 32 at every tournament he goes to. He goes to a few of them, does a bunch of local challenges, wins those, gets his extra CP, goes to Worlds. The difference in caliber between these two players is notable. And the fact that you have someone like Rick who can't go, but someone like, let's just like called X, for example, who can go to Worlds just by simply having... Oh, I wanted to not say the name, but all right, we'll go with that, Debbie.
Let's roll.
Oh.
But that thought there concerns me in terms of like, we may not have world-class battlers going to 2 Worlds to compete, but we'll have people who just simply, I have enough time and energy, time and money to go to these tournaments and just keep competing over and over again until I have enough points to go. And that's why I say it's now a matter of quantity over quality.
Yeah, as long as you're at a certain level of ability. Like, again, like top 32 is very doable. And like the kicker there is 80, which a lot of tournaments through Europe and the North American region hit 80 people for that 32 person kicker. It's incredibly doable if you're sort of decent at the game. So with enough time and enough money, it's very sort of forcible to push through, which isn't an option. I mean, look, if you have infinite money, then we can keep on traveling to Europe every second weekend. But from a reasonable standpoint, that's just not an option for us. So, yeah, we'll see. Look, we'll see what happens. We know that TPCI is watching and very thankful for that. So I guess we'll see how it goes. I think this has probably been our longest podcast yet overall.
Yeah, it's pretty up there.
What more could we expect with like Yako coming in? I mean, this guy.
Yeah, I tend to do a lot of waffling.
A professional waffler, if you could say. Not only a professional pogo player, but this guy's got 2 talents. But just like last time, I guess the first time you came on of 3, we did have a random question at the end, and we did prepare one for this as well. So I hope you're ready, because the big question is, if you had to do a Go Battle League battle with one of your feet, is it right-footed or left-footed?
Left.
Oh gosh, he's a contrarian.
I'm left-handed.
I'm
pretty sure someone during the battles asked me that. Yeah, someone asked me during the battles. It's like, are you left-handed? I'm like, yeah, why? You're just tapping weirdly. I'm like, yeah, wait, what? And like, I remember during one of my battles, someone asked me, and that was really distracting. Because then I was thinking about, like, do I play differently because I'm left-handed? I was having like an existential crisis, like in the middle of one of these battles, because I'm like, am I different? Like, what's going on here?
Oh no! Oh no!
Yako, yes, you are different, and that's okay.
But yes, left foot, specifically the big toe, more surface area.
Oh yeah, you want to go for those big taps, the big dun dun dun
Yeah.
dun dun. Although you always struck me as don't you quite often tap with both thumbs?
No, no,
Oh.
I'm always my right thumb.
Hang on a minute.
Left-handed,
Did-
right
did you watch
thumb.
that? Yeah.
Ah,
That's
Just
why.
made him-
That's why. And, yeah, I'm breaking everyone's minds right now. I'm left-handed, but I play with my right hand.
this guy. Why'd we invite him on here? That's all right. That's all the time we've got. We're back to Yako for coming on for the third time on this podcast. First ever third time guest. First ever second time guest, I think. But of course,
Woo-hoo.
all of the links in the description doobly-doo for the old Yako guy. And actually, only one more really important question. Streams when? Come on. Twitch.tv/YACOBERVITCH? Soon? Waiting.
Oh, stream. I thought you said dream. I was like, wait, what?
Oh,
Sorry, I misheard. I'm stream.
Going to
Look, eventually a stream will happen. Once I retire and I start playing different games.
once you retire, that's every second month. We're expect streams soon, I guess. Yep.
I have been looking into doing it. There may be something coming up.
Okay. No spoilers.
Okay.
We'll keep an
Go
eye out on
Go
that.
follow now. Go follow now to get the notification.
2026.
Oh yeah. After Worlds Brisbane, where I'm sure they'll come here. I'm sure.
Yep.
But yeah, we can believe Opium. But thanks for Realsies for coming on and spending a very long period of time rambling about a video game is G-rated. And good luck at traveling to a faraway country to compete in this video game for that is G-rated. Tap. I didn't really think about the fact that we actually have to hit the stop button on this thing. Hang on, Debbie. What do we like? Oh, thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow at the G'day Battles on the things, and we aren't like other podcasts. Maybe we suck because we haven't been doing like rate us 5 stars on like Spotify and stuff.
Yeah, do that.
that's
Do
it.
that if you're on that, do that. That'd be nice. Thanks.
Okay,
And
bye.
don't forget to subscribe to Steve's OnlyFans.
Oh, that too. Thanks. Bye. Oh wait,
what?
actually, probably should have mentioned. Again, we sort of briefly skipped over it, but YouTube.com/PvPSteve, the top 4 battles, most of them are on there. So if you do actually want to see any of these battles that didn't get a live broadcast, we at least got a week late live broadcast. So they're there. Bye for realsies.
Bye.
Are we going to do the thing where we actually? Nah, never mind. We just play the intro music at the start.
Do
and then
what
we're
you
not
want to
doing
do. Do what you want to do.
Yeah, heck it.
It's your podcast.
Last time we recorded a separate intro, and joint mine. We're just going in raw.
Ooh.
So
That's your intro? Going in raw?